Good morning, everybody. It's 10 o'clock sharp, so I propose that we start with this seminar. Thank you for joining us at this webinar that is co-organized by Accountancy Europe and by the EACB, that's the European Association of Corporate Banks. With this first of all, seminar, thank you for joining us at this webinar that is co-organized by Accountancy Europe and by the seminar will be recorded, and you will have always this possibility to look at it afterwards on the website. You can ask questions through Slido, so you see here on the screen where you can put your question, because unfortunately it will not be possible to ask questions directly to the panelists, but start already sending your questions to Slido, and you have to introduce the meeting code, which you see now on the screen. So I hope that you understand that with the number of participants, we cannot give the possibility to have an answer to all the questions. My name is Luc Hendricks. I'm director at SME United, the European SME organization, and I will moderate this webinar. And I propose that we go immediately to the first speaker, to Mr. Ivan Stefanec, who has gently accepted to speak on his behalf and to shine his light on the relation between small and medium-sized enterprises and the non-financial information issue. Mr. Stefanec, I think most of you know him, but he's also the president of SME Europe, the European Parliament's Christian Democrats SME group, and he's also in the Committee on Foreign Affairs, the shadow rapporteur on corporate due diligence. Mr. Stefanec, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for a very kind introduction. I'd like to welcome everybody also to this webinar on non-financial information for SMEs, and to thank Accountancy Europe and the European Association of Cooperative Banks for inviting me to give this opening statement. Let me start also on behalf of SME Europe with this information that recently we organized a survey among SMEs across the European Union. And I have to say that many SMEs, as we know, they face a lot of difficulties. Half of them, they face bankruptcies. And we ask SMEs what really they need. And the result was, firstly, they need improved access to credit. Secondly, they need some tax reliefs, and thirdly, last but not least, they need to simplify all administrative procedures, particularly how to get to credit, how to survive. And now, as I was introduced, also I'm shadow reporter on this particular proposal about corporate due diligence, where is the threat of some new rules and new administrative duties. I have to say that my position is that this should not be achieved via increased administrative burdens and blaming companies, especially SMEs. But I have to say, corporate due diligence may implement mandatory due diligence requirements in the form of a directive for undertakings operating in the EU internal markets to continuously assess whether they cause or contribute to adverse human rights, environmental, and good governance impact through activities in their value chain. The Commission's proposals on corporate due diligence is to be expected towards the end of second quarter of this year. We talk really how to prevent human rights, environmental, and governance adverse impacts from occurring in their value chains, and to properly address such adverse impacts when they occur. This means that due diligence is a mere obligation of means, not an obligation of results, and that the directive follows a risk-based approach, whereby companies should establish and implement a due diligence strategy taking into account the likelihood, severity, and urgency of potential or actual adverse impacts, the nature and context of their operations, including geographic, the scope of the risk, their scale, and how irremediable they might be. I have to say that there is the threat that SMEs will be facing a lot of non-financial information and supply chain due diligence requirement in coming years, even if European Commission does not include SMEs in the scope of its coming proposal. We expect that SMEs to still have to provide non-financial information and conduct due diligence to their market partners, such as banks, as a condition for getting loans from them, or larger supply chain partners who will need this information from SMEs to fulfill their own legal requirements, and possibly even the public sector as part of public procurement contracting to the SMEs. So we have to work on effective system of sustainable environment for entrepreneurs, employees, and countryside. However, it must be done in sensitive way, reflecting possibilities and capacities, particularly of small and medium entrepreneurs. We have to define very clearly the scope of due diligence and level of responsibility. We will require deep impact assessment from the European Commission on SMEs. And even now, in the time of COVID crisis, we can't put more bureaucracy on the shoulders of the most vulnerable, even as we know that SMEs represent the backbone of European economy. For fast recovery, we need to offer accessible credit, lower or simplified level of bureaucracy, and no more taxes. Accountants, as the trusted advisors of SMEs across Europe, can and should play a big role in helping their SMEs clients fulfill due diligence and sustainability requirements. And banks will remain the key finance providers for SMEs for the foreseeable future. So they also have a big role to play in helping SMEs to adapt to new conditions. I do hope that SMEs, ecosystem actors, whether SMEs, banks, accountants, or others, come up with practical solutions that will enable SMEs to play their vital part in the sustainable transition of European economy. So let me thank you for your useful work, what you do, and I wish you a lot of success and very productive webinar today. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Mr. Stefanec. Unfortunately, you will not have the possibility to reply to questions, but once again, thank you for your intervention on this important topic. So then I turn immediately to our first speaker of the panel, to Malgorzata Feluch. Malgorzata is a policy officer at DG FISMA of the European Commission. And maybe the first question, Malgorzata, is, can you, because I understand that you can, of course, not elaborate on what the position of the Commission will be with the new financial reporting directive, but can you maybe elaborate a little bit on the process that is ongoing? What can we expect in the upcoming weeks and months, and what are the main considerations of the Commission in this respect?
Yes, thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. Yes, indeed. As you probably know, the Commission plans to adopt the proposal for the revised non-financial reporting directive by the end of April. The preliminary date now scheduled for adoption is 21st of April. And we are currently having inter-service internal consultation on the scope of the directive and the possible options. So this is a very much time when we have a really in-depth work on the proposal. So as you understand, I cannot really comment on the scope of a proposal, as the decision hasn't been taken so far. But what I can say that the plans are that a Commission adopt the proposal by the end of April, and immediately afterwards the negotiations both on Council and Parliament start. And in addition, if the Commission adopts in the proposal the requirement or proposes development of a European sustainability reporting standards, that the Commission will start creating advisory body that will provide recommendations to the Commission on how the future reporting standards could look like, so that the work on level 1 text, meaning the revision of a non-financial reporting directive, and the preparatory work on the development of standards go in parallel. You may have seen maybe 2 reports that have been recently published by EFRAG, and maybe I would like to comment what is the role of those reports in the whole process and what they're trying to propose. So the Commission has asked the EFRAG to work on 2 different issues. One is the proposal for how the sustainability reporting standards could be developed, and this has been done by the multi-stakeholder task force chaired by Mr. De Camburg. And the other report, has been carried out by the president of the EFRAG, and this report sets the possible governance structure of a body that will be advising Commission of the development of the reporting standards. In the end, the decision on the standards will be taken by the Commission, of course, but if it is the decision, if it is the proposal of the Commission, and it is agreed, of course, by the Council and the Parliament. But we wanted to make sure that we set the whole process in motion as soon as possible, knowing that there's a lot of pressure on the market for companies reporting comprehensive, reliable, and standardized and verified information and non-financial information. We have asked those 2 bodies to elaborate on the future possible governance structure, so how the standards could be developed, by whom, and how they could look like in the future. But we haven't asked yet any body to actually come up with a proposal of a concrete standards. This is too early at this stage. This will follow the decision of the Council and the Parliament, because these are, in the end, those who will take the final decision. On the content, what I can say that we have carried the open public consultation, which have listed a number of possible options. And in relation to the scope, what we have received is very strong support of including under the scope all large companies, both listed and non-listed companies, including also large companies established in the EU but listed outside the EU, as well as large companies established outside the EU and listed in the EU. There was much less, so the HIE support was between 62 to 72% of respondents. There was much less support for including SMEs under the scope, actually very little support. However, we have received a substantial support for development of voluntary standards for SMEs. And this support came both from an open public consultation as well as a targeted consultation for SMEs. Thank you.
Thank you. If I may come back on the EFRAG report, because there, of course, there are already some clear recommendations. But how do you see the EFRAG report and the proposals that were made there for the SME side? Can you give already an idea of what the Commission is thinking about the proposals on the SMEs?
Well, the EFRAG report has been just published at the beginning of March. So we are now in the process of analyzing recommendation, and of course it has a very wide scope. It doesn't only refer to the potential standards for SMEs, but we very much welcome this report. We of course, it will be up to the Commission to decide to what extent follow on the recommendations of this report. But what the EFRAG report is proposing, of course, under the assumption that the revised non-financial reporting directive will not include SMEs under the scope, the EFRAG report is proposing simplified voluntary standards for SMEs. And we very much welcome this proposal. It also proposes that these standards should be proportionate and they should take into account the resources of SMEs as well as their specific situation. So it includes already very interesting, further discussion on how to develop the standards for SMEs without going, of course, into discussion what exactly could those standards look like, because as I said, it's too early at this stage to discuss that, because the Commission has not yet even taken the decision, but there is a need to develop reporting standards. We work under this assumption, but the final decision has not been taken yet. So we welcome the report, we are analyzing it, and we will take it into account in the proposal now for the adoption by the Commission. But of course, the report mainly will be crucial for the next stage, which will be development of the standards themselves.
Okay, thank you. Maybe then a last short question. Even if the SMEs will not be directly under the scope of the new NFRD, they will suffer from the trickle-down effect because they will be asked by their in the supply chain, or then also due to the taxonomy by the banks. How is the Commission going to tackle this? Because as you know, the Commission has now introduced the one in, one out in order to reduce the administrative burdens for companies in general, that whenever there is a new legislation, that the Commission should look in reducing the cost for administrative burdens in other policies. Is the Commission already thinking about this at the moment?
Yes, we are very much aware that even if the proposal will not directly include SMEs under the scope, maybe with the exception of a listed SMEs, but of course subject to the decision of a College of Commissioners, there might be indirect effect on SMEs, but indeed which are indeed in the supply chain of a large companies, but might be brought under the scope of the NFRD, and indeed they are also might be indirectly affected by the requirements related to the financial market participants reporting on their portfolios. So it is another reason for which we think even if voluntary, the standards for SMEs could really help in that respect, because if SMEs on voluntary basis decide to report some key information, this should ease the pressure from the financial market participants and from the companies to which they provide services and goods on asking them for additional information. So we even regardless of a decision of a Commission whether or not to develop simplified standards for SMEs, we think that would be important tool for SMEs to help them, first of all, to show that we are really moving towards more sustainable operations, and also to demonstrate to financial market participants their progress. Of course, we do not expect that each and every SME will be reporting. There is also ongoing discussions on the uses of proxies and estimations and other methodologies to assess, to be used by the financial market participants to assess their exposure in relation to SMEs. But nonetheless, we think that if we want to move the economy towards more sustainable development, every and each company would probably make an effort, and as well as each and every household, and as well as me and you. So, so I think it's for all our good and for our future that we make an effort in that respect. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will probably come back to you during the Q&A session, but as we started to talk about the financial sector, I turn now to our next panelist, Kristiina Vares-Wartiovaara. She is a ESG specialist. She was also, together with me, member of the project task force in EFRAG, and she is representing the cooperative banks. Kristiina, also welcome. What is your assessment of the EFRAG project task force proposals from the point of view of the cooperative banks? Kristiina? Okay.
Hello, Luke. Sorry, I was on mute. Hello, everybody. Thank you for listening. Very good questions. So from both financial institutions' point of view and SMEs' point of view, EFRAG proposal for the future standard it will be definitely a very big step forward. One of the main guiding lines or principles of doing this standard suggestion was so-called co-construction approach, which is a very ambitious global approach, meaning that EU would not only incorporate the best global practices of standardization of reporting, but will aim to also contribute through the European best practices and already advanced European legislation on sustainability. So regarding financial institutions, the most important question relating to financial institutions is the availability of data from the companies which financial institutions finance and invest in, and standardization, even in its simplest form, and this proposal is far not simple, it's very elaborate, but any standardization would help us as financial institutions. So we are very grateful for this step going forward. The standard will include, as one of the proposals, so first of all, both in considering the special features of financial institutions is one of the main of the 5 main building blocks of the future standard. So it's one of the 5 most important areas of the proposal. And considering special needs of the financial institutions is mainly related to the role of financial institutions as users of information. So EFRAG project task force focused mainly on how financial institutions could get and the information from companies, and how we could structure our reports on this so-called indirect impacts on environmental, social, and governance topics. The structure of the future disclosure, which is proposed, considers even the sub-segments. So we propose that it should focus on 3 main types of financial institutions and also their sub-business segments. So very well considering our needs. There is also a lot of proposals regarding data quality in the standard suggestion. And also it touches, of course, upon the topic of the single access point of the data register for the future financial and non-financial information, which is very important for the users of information. From the point of view of the structure of or architecture of the future reporting standard, there are a number of points which relate to SMEs. There is so-called rule of three. So there are 3 layers to the futures reporting, which is sector agnostic, which means that it's data points which need to be reported by all sectors, all companies. There is sector-specific layer, which will be only for certain sectors to report, and there is entity-specific layer. So entities who report will be able to define also, for example, if they report in multiple business sectors, so they will bring this up in the entity-specific layer, and which reporting metrics are material for the specific entity, even if they are maybe not defined in the sector agnostic, sector specific levels. Then on SME, it's important to add here that there will be SME enabling approach, which means that for SMEs, the standard will not be a copy or will not be a simplified, just a simplified version of the main standard, but the proposal has taken this further to consider the way how the SMEs are managed, not only the size of the company in terms of employees, but also the size of the balance sheet and management structure, whether it's high risk, not high risk sector. So there will be many issues considered while defining the SME and also in a specific sector, how to structure the reporting standard for SMEs. So this work is very elaborate to my opinion, and I'm very positive about this proposal. Coming back to the rule of three, so I mentioned 3 layers of reporting. There are also 3 reporting areas, so strategy, implementation, and performance measurement. And here also SMEs are standing out in terms that SMEs do not produce necessarily management reports. So level 1 legislations, if it decides to increase the scope of an FRD, then we need to consider how to accommodate the needs of entities which are currently not required to publish management reports. So most likely, probably be just in a separate document than the place where this information is conveyed. And then the last, number 3, there are 3 reporting topics. So in traditional ESG, environment, social, and the governance. So in this standard proposal, there is governance plus category, which is new to everybody. And it was introduced by the EFRAG report to go more deeply into the reporting entity itself, into how it is managed, also from the point of view of organization structure, of innovation, and also intangibles reporting, which are new issues to be included into the traditional ESG framework. So from maybe the last point, you, Luca, welcome to ask additional questions. I would like to mention the timeline of implementation. So the first draft of the first standard is expected in the middle of 2022, with reports published in 2024. And then there is a second draft by mid-23 with reports, then more deepened, elaborate reports published in 2025. And then the next draft will be in the middle of 24. So there will be a step-by-step approach to introducing the standard with the very first draft and the first standard only focusing on the most important issues, which for financial institutions and for all other companies as well, of course, would first of all mean the climate issues, which is an emergency for all of us, and for the most important other topics, also the future-oriented climate metrics of transition metrics will be considered here. So maybe I will stop here. So Luke, back to you.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Kristiina. I didn't want to interrupt you because you presented in a very comprehensive way the outcome of the EFRAG report, focusing on the important things, the point of view of the cooperative bank. So I suppose that from what I understand, that from the cooperative bank side, you are very happy with the outcome of the report, and we from the SME side, we are also very happy with the outcome of the report, especially also on the proportionality principle, which is proposed by the EFRAG group. Having said this, I will now turn to Hilde Blomme. She is Deputy CEO of Accountancy Europe. And Hilde, if you have heard the views of the cooperative banks on the EFRAG proposals, what is the point of view, what is the position of Accountancy Europe, not only on the report, but also especially from the accountant side on including small and medium-sized enterprises in the non-financial reporting directive? Hilde.
Thank you, Luc, for the introduction, and good morning to everybody. On actually what we have heard and also what we have seen in the EFRAG report, I think Accountancy Europe is very supportive of the Green Deal, and the EFRAG report is obviously a part towards implementing this and making this happen. We very much hold the view that as far as reporting, because that's what it is about on NFI information, there is a need for already a number of years to actually have some kind of, a cooperation, a consolidation, a coordination, and the EFRAG report will very much contribute to that on European level, and hopefully also in, as the word is used, co-construction with the global level. Now, if we return then to NFI and SMEs, I think what we heard from Malgorzata from the Commission very much resonates with us. Sustainability, ESG, is a responsibility for all and every one in the individual sphere and in the corporate sphere, in the public sector, in the private sector. And so there is also a expectation on SMEs there, because they are a very large part of the economy. And then if we listen to Kristiina from the banks, there is potentially going to be a need for information in order for also SMEs to get financing, but also for information needs of the bank and for their reporting themselves. So we believe NFI is something that is also of importance to SMEs, and it is not only about administrative burden, there is and there should also be a positive side to it. It is about identifying risks so that you can manage them. It is also about identifying opportunities for an SME so that in looking at their longer term business sustainability, they can actually build this in. So we see this as a matter that SMEs together with accountants, hopefully, as our MVP Stefanec said, the trusted advisors often of SMEs, that we can work together so that we can help SMEs to actually go into a sustainability transition in order for them to basically for the needs that will come towards them, but also for their own further development of their business, that they can grow in this furthermore. We have been working within Accountancy Europe at a 3-step sustainability assessment tool for SMEs. It's quite high level, and I would be very happy to expand a little bit on that if we have time to do that.
Yes, please do so, Hilde.
Good, very good. Well, what we have been working on, and if all goes well, next month in April, we should be able to publish this. We actually have a 3-step approach, whereby the first step would be really to build the business profile of an SME as far as their business model, as far as their value creation, really, I would say, gathering information on that. The second step would be to conduct a what we call a sustainability mapping. So really to have the necessary information to be able to make decisions towards this sustainable transition for an SME. So there are a few things that would need to be done for that. So for instance, to identify, the risks and the opportunities as far as sustainability are concerned for SMEs, based on, the information that is there, but to also, in the next step, to identify where the information is missing, what would need to be done to get this. Maybe there is a need for bringing in some experts to do that. And, in order to make this operational, to make this simple to do, we have been thinking about a grid whereby, and I will share my screen here just for a moment, whereby actually we would look at the inherent risks, the financial risks, and the control risks related to different ESG indicators or categories. And with that, we would hope, just scrolling down, you see what it would look like. You hopefully would come in this way to a risk scoring exercise and a risk score, so that actually in a next step, in a final step, the accountant together with the SME could actually monitor in order to improve based on the risk score. How is the SME doing? The score would indicate this, so that they know in which areas to improve, and to potentially prepare not only for the sustainable transition within the company to reap the benefits from it, but also if there would eventually be reporting needs put on them, to already be able to prepare towards this. The tool that we are thinking about, this is not about reporting. This is really to prepare for steps in anticipation, potentially, if there would be a need of this.
Thank you very much, Hilde. Then I think we can turn to the Q&A session. Please, if you have questions, put them on Slido. We have already some questions. The first question may be again to the Commission. will ESAP, and those who do not know ESAP, it's the European Single Access Point, will this play a role in the non-financial information disclosures by SMEs? And then there was another question, if the Commission working on tools and guidance for SMEs, but I think there, Malgorzata, that you already answered this question. On
Yes,
the first question, the role of ESAP.
Okay, thank you. Yes, this is a very important question because indeed, in parallel to the work on the revision of the non-financial reporting directive, we are also working on the creation or development of European Single Access Point, where all the information, public information published by companies could be easily accessible. That would the work is ongoing on both levels, on the legal side, which probably would mean the need to revise the transparency directive, but also other pieces of legislation to make sure that any public reports coming from companies will be submitted to this mechanism that will make it accessible via European Single Access Point. But this is also, and there will be also, of course, a technical side to this, how to do it on the technical level. And the first idea is because under the Transparency Directive, member states already have to organize and run in national databases, where we call them officially appointed mechanism. I mean, it's just this, jargon, or the Commission jargon. But the idea is now that these national databases will be connected and interlinked, so that there will be one point of access where it doesn't matter where the company is located and to which, in which country it provides its reporting, but will be easily reachable and accessible, and that it will be more digitalized and easily, also downloadable. But of course, this is very clearly linked to the reporting standards and requirements, because you can only have more digitalized access to reports if they are reported according to standards and if they are tagged and digitalized. So it will be difficult to have access to information provided by SMEs if it's not done in the standardized way. So again, here it again points out to the need to have a standardized way of reporting by SMEs, even if it's voluntary, because it would also help them to reach to potential future investors. What are financial market participants saying? That it's for them difficult to invest in SMEs because they basically do not have access to information. It's difficult to find information about SMEs. So it could work both ways for the SMEs to reach wider potential investors, to show that they are to show their sustainability angle, to increase their reputation, but also for the financial institutions to have better information on their future investments or existing ones. So indeed, this is being discussed. It would, of course, require that those voluntary reporting would be done in the digitalized ways and with tagging. But as I said, this is ongoing in parallel to the work on the revision of a non-financial reporting directive.
Okay, thank you, Malgorzata. And then maybe a question for Kristiina. Will the banks develop guidance for SMEs to help them to fulfill the possible non-financial information requirements? Because probably it will be necessary to obtain a loan. Kristiina?
Hello again. So it's very much up to this future standard and not to the banks to develop develop the guidance and the minimum reporting requirements for the small and medium-sized companies. So I'm very much looking forward to the standard defining what SMEs need to report, and rather so that the banks would then look at those minimum reporting requirements, and hopefully they will be sufficient for for the banks to make decisions, and that's the main idea of combining in one standard the needs of financial institutions as users and the needs of SMEs as reporting entities, that what they need to report needs to be sufficient also for us as users. So hopefully no additional guidance would be needed to do this reporting and matching the needs.
Okay, yeah, but in any case, the SMEs are not immediately under the also not under the taxonomy. So there again we have this trickle down effect. But will the banks go that far that they will need a verification or assurance from what the SMEs are going to disclose? If this will be so, I mean, once again, the SMEs are not under the scope of the taxonomy. How can we ensure that this does not become another burden and an additional burden for SMEs to have access to finance?
Yes, this is a very important question. Of course, there is no decision or no such information that the banks are developing special separate guidance or on assurance, but the standard proposal includes the need for all the reported data to be at such a level that it can be assured. So if the future standard will define certain metrics to be reported, then they all need to be so it needs to be, it's such a clear, the definition needs to be so clear that the information needs to be able to be assured without very big additional burden. So this is the thing which is built into the future standard again. So yes, the data needs to be assured, but hopefully without very big burden if the defined metrics are very clear and easy to report and to understand. And also it will be helpful to introduce the standard in layers, as I mentioned, in steps, so there will be time to adjust, and also the standard proposes voluntary reporting for the SMEs at first, so it's not up to the PTF, the working group which proposed the standards to say whether they need to be voluntary or not, but we nevertheless proposed on a voluntary basis to start with, which means that also the assurance part probably is a soft zone, at least in the first years.
Okay, thank you, Katarina. Another question is, and this I think a question this is quite important. By the way, SME United has asked for this for many years already, when the actual non-financial reporting directive has been approved already a couple of years ago. Should the European Commission not dedicate funding support for SMEs to help them build their sustainability, non-financial information reporting capacity? This is a little bit linked with also the question that we had on guidance. over to the Commission on this again.
Yes, thank you. Yes, so indeed, this is a crucial thing to help SMEs to build their capacity, but it's going far beyond just reporting, because reporting is like the second stage. The first stage is a change to the internal organization and to the business structure and business management, and then you report on it. So this is very crucial, as has been already mentioned by the key speaker, that the Commission is also working on another proposal related to the due diligence for companies, which is at much earlier stage of the internal discussion. So I think there will be a need to look all together on all those measures and provide some kind of support to SMEs. There are different financial funding possibilities. But what I wanted to say is that on the guidance side, we would like to avoid situation where there's a multiple of different guidance, like there is now like a multiple of different reporting frameworks existing, and which creates a lot of confusion and additional burdens to companies. I'm not talking here only about SMEs, but companies in general that do not know actually which, according to which international, global or private framework to report, and quite often they are faced by the need to report according to a number of different frameworks, because these are expectations from financial market participants. So the idea behind the creation of European reporting standards is which would be also done in a co-construction way, so will be built on the basis of existing best practices or best reporting frameworks. So we would like to avoid this multitude of guidance for SMEs, as we want to avoid a multitude of different frameworks for companies in general. Therefore, the idea is that whatever future voluntary or not voluntary, but it will be up to the legislative process standards will look like, but they will meet the needs of different users. So of course, this is not an easy thing to do. It's much easier to say it, but they will meet the needs of financial market participants, and at the same time of what will be requiring information from their investors or from companies to which they lend money, but also they would meet the needs of the companies which in the supply chain. So SMEs which would not be directly affected by the requirements to report sustainability information, but they will not receive, hundreds, or depending also on their situation, a number of different requests for non-financial information. So the idea is that we work together in a very inclusive way, and this is following the advice of the other report published by EFRAG on how the standards could be developed, which is proposing a very inclusive process. It's proposing to create a second leg in EFRAG, non-financial reporting leg, that would be carried out in a very consultative and inclusive way with a multi stakeholders involved, both European and international, just to avoid of a multitude of different standards coming and creating additional confusion. But of course, it's up to be seen and to be discussed, and it will be very important but also difficult process, obviously, ahead of us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Malgorzata. Speaking also about guidance, as Hilde mentioned, the tool that Accountancy Europe and the EACB produced. Hilde, can you maybe a little bit elaborate further on the role of guidance and the role of this voluntary tool?
Thank you, Luc. I try to. I think the idea of guidance for SMEs to report is one that we think our tool could contribute to, because as I explained before, it's based on ESG indicators. And if you look at what EFRAG has proposed, they have 3 layers of reporting, 3 reporting areas and 3 topics. And the topics are very much built on ESG plus. So actually our tool is based first on foremost on gathering information, see where there are gaps, and then bringing those gaps in as well. So if you say you are looking at gathering information, then obviously you can from that you could go a step further, not only use it for a risk scoring, for a risk assessment purpose, but you could, because there is an information gathering on which you can rely, you could distill from that also a reporting tool if there would be a need. So we are obviously not sure what eventually the Commission will have in mind and what they would be looking for, but we would definitely be very happy once the tool is out to further discuss it with them and potentially elaborate it so that it can help to achieve what is being put forward in the NFRD revision.
Okay, thank you. And then maybe a last question, and that directed to the 3 panelists. What should, in your view, be the priority areas for SMEs for reporting? Should it be the CO2 reporting, sustainable finance, or a broader reporting? What are your ideas on this? Maybe Kristiina?
Yes, so of course, climate reporting has been mentioned as one of the most important priorities in the future standard. From financial institutions' points of view, we of course would like to see the financially material metrics first. So sector specific, the most important sector specific metrics. But then, as Malgorzata very well explained, the reporting is very stakeholder and value chain based issue. So all the small companies, they're in a value chain with other companies. So I think the most important in the very first stage would be to identify what those value chains need to really produce the minimum needed reporting chain. So we as financial institutions would welcome focusing on only the most material sector specific and climate issues first.
Okay, thank you. And then maybe Hilde, on the, and I do not want to put pressure on you or on your team, but when will this tool be ready? And I've also understood that it's not in fact a tool for the SMEs themselves, but more for the accountants, isn't it?
Indeed. So we plan and hope that we can publish it next month in April 2021, to be clear. And indeed, the tool is meant for an accountant to work with their client to actually gather the information, to identify the gaps, and then to help the SME to actually go into sustainability transition so that they are ready for having not only the reporting that might be required eventually, but also to actually respond to risk, sustainability risk they have, but to also reap the benefits of a sustainability transition for actually the long-term durability of their business. So hopefully that will be able to be achieved. Thank you.
Thank you. And then maybe a last remark, because I saw that there was a remark on what I said concerning the fact that the SMEs are not in the EU taxonomy. According to me, they are not in. It will depend on the scope of the non-financial reporting directive. And by the way, if SMEs are in, what I've always heard is that it was there by accident, as this the compromise on the taxonomy was concluded at 4 o'clock in the morning, and it was never the idea to include the SMEs in the taxonomy. But maybe the Commission can give the right answer to this. Malgorzata.
Yes, indeed, we get those questions. So, yeah, the link between taxonomy and the SMEs, the link between taxonomy and companies, because taxonomy is not, companies are not, taxonomy is not designed to imply to companies, apart from the reporting requirement of Article 8, which says that companies under the scope of NFRD, which is currently only large companies, will be required to report on 3 KPIs, on CapEx, OpEx, and turnover, and proportion of CapEx, OpEx turnover in relation to sustainable activities. So this is the link. Indeed, if the and currently this would apply. I mean, from the beginning. I mean, the Commission has not yet adopted the delegated act under Article 8. It's scheduled for June, but under current legal framework, it will be applicable only to large companies, companies which are under the scope of NFRD, large listed companies and large non-listed companies according to the existing scope. If there is any decision to enlarge the scope, it would, of course, apply also to the additional companies that will be brought under the NFRD. But these are only 3 KPIs. And as I said, we do not foresee, I mean, our understanding is that it's very unlikely that SMEs at large will be included in the scope of NFRD, apart maybe from listed SMEs, but to be seen. So there is no direct reporting requirement on SMEs stemming from the taxonomy. I hope I clarified it. Thank you.
Yes, indeed, it was crystal clear, Malgorzata. So then I see that it's a couple of minutes after 11. I think that we can conclude this short webinar. I would like to thank our panelists, Malgorzata, Kristiina, and Hilde. And once again, you can re-watch this webinar on the websites of both Accountancy Europe and of the EACB. So thank you very much and have a nice afternoon, and see you